Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, November 29th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Tennessee's 7th Congressional District, as Republicans are now jumping into this race in an effort to save them in a district that voted for the president by over 20 points in the last presidential election cycle. Tennessee's 7th Congressional District, which has a surprise vacancy out of the district here, currently represented, or I guess previously represented by Mark Green, decided that he was going to be left office in July of 2025, was there for the vote for Donald Trump's quote-unquote one big beautiful bill, and it prompted a special election this upcoming December, in just a few days actually, that Republicans have been shockingly worried about. And I say shockingly not just for, not to try to exaggerate the stakes of this election. This is a race that absolutely nobody should have been paying attention to. And I mean that earnestly because this is a congressional district that in the last presidential cycle not only voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly, but in all of their statewide races, you could not find any sign of cracking for Republicans in this district. It's drawn in such a way that elected Marsha Blackburn, re-elected her to the U.S. Senate. She's now running for governor in the volunteer state, but she won by 22 points, and so did the Republican Mark Green, who has been representing this district for quite a period of time. He actually replaced Marsha Blackburn, to my knowledge, in this race when she ran in 2018. But he's been here, right? He's been serving in Congress. He's a known and trusted incumbent. And again, this is an overwhelmingly conservative district. And so knowing that, we saw that this district was going to be up in 2025. It was going to have a December special election, and Democrats were cautiously optimistic about what they might be able to get close to, but never really felt that this seat was within reach. Then Emerson College came out with a brand new poll just this past week showing that Democrat Afton Bain, who's a state representative, she's in this race and is running on the Democratic ticket here to win, and she's down roughly 2 points across the district. Now, keep in mind, again, this is a Trump plus 20 district. In no circumstance should this race even be competitive. And to just give you an idea of what would be necessary on the national level for this district to go to the Democratic Party, you would see that on the national stage, you would need to shift the map by roughly 22 points. Well, if that happens, Tennessee's 7th district would be the last of concerns for the Republican Party. Democrats would be at 291 seats on the national level. This would be the most substantial Democratic majority they've seen in a century, and it would be one that would usher in absolutely the most massive Democratic mandate they've seen in history, at least in recent memory. And so Tennessee's 7th district, again, I only say this to show you just how drastic the map would have to swing in order for this district normally to be competitive and go to the Democratic Party. But Donald Trump and Mike Johnson are now handling a number of campaign events, including a tele-rally for Republicans in this House race, because Donald Trump and the GOP are very worried about what's happening here in Tennessee's 7th. In fact, it was so bad, I covered this last week, that Donald Trump's own super PAC, which has not spent a single dollar on any race since Donald Trump was elected president for the second time, they jumped into the Tennessee special election recently and are now going to be contributing and have been contributing to the millions of dollars that have been spent in this House special election. Again, that was on nobody's radar until the 2025 elections. And so the fact is, Donald Trump and Mike Johnson going into this race show that the Republican Party is quite desperate about what's happening in this district. There are plenty of congressional districts that the president hasn't even surveyed, including ones that have been far more competitive in years past. Because the president has limited time. I get it, right? This is a busy person. You have so much to do, and campaigning for a special election in a district you won by 20 is probably the least of your concerns. But the fact that Donald Trump is making time for it and that Mike Johnson is going to be spending the entire day and few days leading up to, I'm sure he's already there, going to Tennessee and rallying against Afton Bain in this race is an indication that this district in particular is of unique interest to Republicans for arguably the same reasons that it is for Democrats, that this race is going to be shockingly competitive. And I think that Emerson College sort of confirmed our understanding of that. I do think Republicans, and I've maintained this throughout the cycle, I do believe Matt Van Epps will be the next congressman from this district. I don't think Tennessee's 7th is going to flip. It's very hard to see that a Trump plus 22 district, especially as it becomes a more nationalized race, ends up being more in favor of the Democratic Party than we think. I think that it's going to see the pretty natural 15-point swing, roughly that brings it down to the high single digits, maybe even lower, maybe on the upper end of double digits. We'll see, but I still think Matt Van Epps is going to win, and probably by a pretty okay margin. But that shouldn't even be a consideration. This is a district that should be called at poll closing, should be called immediately, and should be in a position that nobody thinks is even remotely competitive. As has been the case with many of these districts in the past, Tennessee's 7th district is one that Matt Van Epps, as a Republican, should be clobbering a Democrat like Afton Bain. And I don't say that to try to discredit the campaign. I mean, I just say it like a Democrat. It doesn't matter what type of Democrat, whether you're endorsed by who, you've campaigned how. This district should not be on anybody's radar. And if it does end up going to the Democratic Party, which I think there's a reason why Trump and Mike Johnson are getting involved, their internal data that might not be publicly available must tell us something and must say something that makes them worried about the current state of this district. There's a reason why the president is taking time away from whatever he does and is going to this district and saying, you need to vote. There's a reason why he's putting out multiple Truth Social posts on the national stage to try to elevate the attention of this race, because they are worried that Republicans will be caught sleeping at the wheel. It's not that Republicans believed adamantly that all of their voters that backed them in the last cycle by 22 points have suddenly changed their minds. I don't agree that that's the case. Persuasion is part of it, but the majority of what we've seen in terms of Democratic vote share has come from who has turned out versus who has not. And in most cases, it has been Democrats turning out at a far higher rate than Republicans. And the early voting data also tells us that Democrats are turning out at a far higher rate than Republicans. This district, though, still has the majority of the early vote coming from the GOP. It is a Republican district. That should be the case. But Democrats, again, are turning out at a higher rate, substantially higher than 2024, not in terms of raw vote number, but by percentage of early voters. And that's, again, estimated model. Tennessee doesn't have one-to-one voter registration the way you would expect in other states. But it is something that the data analysts who have been surveying this race have shown us, and the GOP also knows about this too. There was a leaked memo that talked about how, they feel okay about their current status. But okay does not bring in the president and the Speaker of the House. Okay does not warrant first-time spending in a super PAC when Donald Trump is also holding similar tele-rallies in Virginia and New Jersey to try to get out the vote for Republican candidates there. Because you would not be spending money in a race you did not think you needed to. Money is scarce. Sitting on a war chest and using it intermittently sure matters. And it happens, and we've seen it before with presidents in the past and all these different things. But Donald Trump in particular has been very careful about withholding his funds, quite tremendously so, that he's sitting on such large amounts that it's newsworthy that he is breaking that, unwillingness to spend money on anything besides his own campaigns, to spend it on Matt Van Epps in Tennessee's 7th District. Because it shows that they worry about what's happening there. It shows that the president realizes that this is a race that is somehow in consideration for the Democratic Party. And that is why they are making all these last-minute moves, because otherwise, if it was always going to be competitive, they would have done this weeks ago. They would have done this months ago. This district has been on the radar for being a race since July of 2025. Right? While the president was down in Mar-a-Lago, and all of these things were happening, and amidst the government shutdown, there was ample time to get ahead of this. But it is this last-minute and last-ditch effort to try to save the GOP in this race, which I do think will largely be successful, right? I do think the more nationalized this race gets, the better it is for the GOP. Republicans outnumber Democrats in this district nearly 2-1, and so it's not a district at all that would be conducive to Democrats winning. I mean, you've seen here that Tennessee's 7th District, Democrats got less than 40% of the vote in the last cycle. So then why is it competitive? I think Democrats should reorient the way they look at this race. I think a lot of Democrats are saying, this is a race that Democrats can win. And I don't disagree that there should be an optimistic view of looking at it from both sides of the aisle. Republicans should be striving for that 22-point victory. Democrats should be striving for a victory. But to level set and be very honest with you about the status of this race, while it is a close race, I do think Republicans still have that upper hand. It is tremendously difficult to take down Republican plus 22 districts. But it has been done before by the Democratic Party, and it has been done in the day and age of a Trump administration. And I bring you back to 2016 to show you an example. In Pennsylvania's 18th district, the district was so Republican that Democrats did not even run a candidate. In fact, they didn't 2 years prior either. The last time Democrats ran a candidate in this race was in 2012, when Tim Murphy defeated his Democratic opponent by 28 percentage points. In 2018, there was a special election. Connor Lamb, a name that might ring a bell, he ran for Senate in Pennsylvania, 4 years after being elected to the House. Spoiler alert, this district goes from being a Republican district to Connor Lamb winning against Rick Saccone. And he does so by a very narrow margin. But you remember, an uncontested race that Donald Trump won this district by 21 points in 2016. Less than 2 years later, a Democrat wins the race for House. And the reason I bring it up is to say that the numbers here have not always been impossible, but they have been quite difficult in the past. We also remember the day and age of races like Kansas's 4th District, where this was a race in 2016, Mike Pompeo won. 2 years later, had a competitive special election, but then it went back to being one. James Thompson ended up losing to Ron Estes by about 19 points, but was certainly in consideration. Or in 2016, Tom Price's district in Georgia 6th was a district Republicans won by 23. They went on to win it by just 3 in 2017, a year later. And so while it wasn't an exact flip, because sometimes it is very difficult to do so, it was indicative of Democrats supercharging their turnout and Republicans really collapsing in a massive way, largely because of the President of the United States. And I think about the way that this district has really changed in the minds of the President and the Speaker of the House. There was no period of time up until recently that they thought this race could even be remotely competitive. In fact, taking a look at the ratings for this special election, it's still not largely seen as a race that is going to be all that competitive. And so the 2025 special, I think, will be quite interesting. When we take a look at the, the numbers here and what the predictions are for this race. So far, they are at lean Republican and likely Republican. What they were just weeks ago was safe Republican. This was not even on anybody's radar. And so the fact that this has narrowed down so significantly, I think, is quite important and also matters a crap ton for 2025 and 2026, because it will tell us just how well Democrats do in this race. How much the race narrows is going to matter a lot, because I still believe Matt Van Epps will win the race. But I do think that the Republican leaders, especially those that are privy to far more information than we are, especially on the internal side, see something wrong going in this race. And that's why they have to save Matt Van Epps. They have to continue to nationalize this race and make it about everything here. And this is a Trump plus 22 district. And if Republicans are forced to compete on that stage on the national level in 2026, Democrats will have an ample opportunity at really doing well in a number of other districts. Because if Republicans are busy defending territory, let's tone it down a little bit, that Trump won by 10 to 15 points, it leaves Democrats a tremendous opportunity at competing in districts that Trump won by 1 to 10 points, and puts Democrats at well within competitive range there, and makes it a near guarantee that they win in those districts because Republicans will be focused elsewhere. And if the president and Mike Johnson are going to be focused on saving some of those larger districts, the ones that were never in consideration but now are because of the unpopularity of the president, it puts the Republican Party in a really terrible position. And we will wait and see this Tuesday if Republicans and Democrats are right about how close this race is going to be, and whether or not Donald Trump's influence ends up benefiting the GOP enough to save them that they win by a considerable amount. A lot of waiting games. We'll know in about 96 hours. A lot to unpack out of this district. We'll be going live if you're interested in watching that. But as it stands today, Trump and Mike Johnson looking like they're going to be hosting a tele-rally alongside a number of other campaign events. They would only be doing this if this race was truly competitive, which it looks like everybody's agreeing finally might actually be. The Trump plus 22 district that nobody was paying attention to weeks ago and months ago has now come onto the radar for literally everyone, including the President of the United States, because the president is so unpopular that even his deepest of red districts are finding themselves at consideration of voting for a Democrat. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.